this book describes the use of 365 plants that Shen was said to have tasted and tasted their efficacy. But really, in reality, he was probably gathering this information from a lot of sources, a lot of men who were involved in the creation of this pharmacopoeia for probably a longer period of time. So it was officially thought to have been published in 2975 BC. And there he described, whoever wrote it, all the people who wrote it, described 365 herbs called tonic herbs, pretty much. The tonic herbs are a superior class of herbs that we focus on, because in those days people weren't really sick yet. They didn't really have sickness. But what was happening was that they just needed to learn how to get away from a tiger faster, things like that. They didn't necessarily, they weren't dealing with, osteoporosis or something. They were trying to, like, how do I chase down this animal? How do I, how are my children going to be strong enough to live in this wild place? So they were looking at things like that. And being the root civilization, maybe one of the root civilizations on Earth, the Manchu peoples, from which the Native Americans migrated from, and that's why they had a profound system of herbology too, probably originally where they came from. These people were among the first peoples on Earth, and in those days you had a pristine environment, so we didn't have to worry so much, like I said, about sickness to it. And so their environment was in the north part of China, on the border of Korea, and there's a mountain there where this whole thing began. And this mountain is called Mount Changbai. The Koreans call it Mount Baekdu. Mount Baekdu. And this is a volcanic mountain that erupted most recently somewhere around 50,000 BC. So what you had at that time was you had a mountain region that looks like our Appalachian Mountains there already. So you had they've been through a few extinction cycles. They were highly eroded, highly complex deciduous forests there. Just like we have in the Appalachian Mountains here. In about 50,000 BC, this big volcano went boom and blew up out of the middle of this place. And you can look today, if you go to the border of South Korea and China, Manchuria, China, in the Manchurian province, you'll see the border of Korea and China going along, and all of a sudden it goes right through this big, giant, snowy volcanic mountain with a big lake right in the middle. The lake shows up like black color on Google Earth. And that's Mount Changbai. Now, what happened was, you had a very complex ecological system. Then when this occurred, these deep ores were blown up out of the earth and distributed on that already very complex ecosystem. These ores were very high and was called diamagnetism. Diamagnetism is the Earth's magnetic force. And so electromagnetism, like in these lights, kind of looks like a sawtooth like this. But diamagnetism looks like the waves in a pond. And they are the energy that is responsible for gravity and levity. You see, because magnets have polarity. And so this became known as yin and yang, this polarized energy between the force of outpouring and the force of intake. And so these ores that came up out of the ground had a lot of this sort of energy in there, this diamagnetic yin and yang energy, and distributed these ores all over the place. And this caused really powerful plants to evolve in this place. So powerful plants that were really resilient, that rose up against the forces of gravity. It was like, we've been focused on gravity all this time, right? Because we're still a young species. But as one of my heroes, Victor Schauberger, said, without levity, there can be no gravity. There's an equal force of levity in the world and nature. We just haven't got there yet. But levity is the diamagnetic force. How is it that these trees can draw nutrients to the very crown? It isn't like they aren't pumping them from up there. There's just a levitational energy drawing them up. And when we look at this energy in our bodies, we see a levitational energy drawing the energy up from our feet. How does our heart pump that from into the vascular system? All that blood back to the heart? It can't do that. So there's an energy that brings this up, and we call this energy Qi. So Qi is the original diamagnetic energy that comes from the sun. The sunlight comes onto the earth, and it is stored in living organisms. The earth is a storage facility of the light. The sun is the mother god, and then the earth is the or maybe son, I don't want to say father, mother, because they're both father and mother, right? It's all father and mother. But the earth is a storage unit of that original qi coming from the sun. Now, the key is, when we look at human health, we say, how does that sunlight wind up in our blood? The sunlight winds up in our blood. We call this qi. This is very interesting. Now, the Chinese have known about this, and the Koreans have known about this for 5,000 years, but there's been a language problem. They haven't been able to explain it very well. And so, right away, I'll tell you, I wrote a book on this. So it's called Raw Qi, and it's about the raw food diet and this energy about how does sunlight wind up in the blood and how do we metabolize air and food and sunlight into energy. And so I'll talk more about this in a little while. So that became the root of our lineage, was this force called yin and yang, and how does sunlight, how does the process of evolution occur through this process of taking in and storing energy and then reusing it. You see, the key to it, one of the keys, is that we don't just use energy immediately as we get it. We actually store some of it for future use. Now, the storage of energy in living organisms is key to the survival and adaptability of a living organism. Now, we call that storage Jing. Jing is the first treasure. The first treasure, there are three treasures I'm going to tell you about in this philosophy, okay? The first one is Jing. Jing is our body's cellular mass. It is the cellular mass of this leaf here. If that leaf is, it's a real leaf, right? Yeah. It is the cellular mass of living organisms and their capacity to reproduce. See, so this thing is Jing, but the seed in it represents the capacity to make another one of these, and that's what is so important. As a storage of life, to pass life on to the next generation. And so we are starting to study generational health in the West. The field of epigenetics is coming in now, which is great. About time. The Chinese have been studying epigenetics now for 5,000 years. They've got a big jump start on us in a lot of ways. And so this first treasure I want to tell you about is called Jing. This is your body's physical mass and our capacity to reproduce another healthy body. How healthy? What vibrance are we passing on? So, the sunlight that comes from the sun, it goes in and it is stored. Then what we eat, hi, how's it going, man? Great. What we eat, and then how is that transformed into cellular mass and stored to be passed on through the genetic lineage to another life? This is Jing. Jing is housed in our kidneys. Now, the Chinese say that our kidneys are the repository of this energy. So our kidneys are like a gold vault that is holding this accumulated energy since the beginning of life on Earth is in here. You know, we're talking about all of the accumulation of life on Earth up to us is being held in our genetic integrity. Our kidneys are a repository of this, and we call it Jing. Now, so it comes down to, the first equation I want to discuss is, it comes down to, what are we putting in our bank? What are we putting in our bank account? Are we putting sunlight in there? This thing has sunlight in it. This has sunlight in it, right? Does a bag of French fries have sunlight in it? Maybe a little, but somebody's messed with it, you know? They've taken some of the sunlight out of it. So, when we put pure sunlight into our body, it is metabolized in, and we derive immediate energy through this force we call qi, but also some of it is carried down and stored for future use and for our children right here. Now, the kidneys are, Jing is said to be a 4-generational issue. So if you want to look at the actual root of your health, you should go back and look at your great-grandparents. Everything they did, everything they were doing, how they were living, what they were saying, I mean, well, what they were, yes, what they were expressing, right? And what they were eating, were they drinking pure water, were they away from EMFs, were they away from chemical pharmaceuticals, were they away from this and that, chemical foods? In many of our cases, yes, our great-grandparents were living in a simpler, more pure place, and they had more Jing, and that's, I believe, maybe one reason why we're here today. And that's one reason why you all had the wherewithal to come here, because you all have Jing. So when you have a lot of Jing, when your ancestors have invested in you, they put gold in your bank, they ate pure food, they ate blueberries off the vine, they drank clean water, then you are a living testimonial of that right now. Now let's imagine that your great-grandparents, let's come up with a scenario here. Okay, your great-grandparents lived out in Vermont in the countryside somewhere, and they ate wild raspberries, and they drank out of the creek. And so then it came wartime, right? And they moved into the city, and your grandparents moved into the city to work in a factory. So your grandmother was a, your grandfather went into these sooty industries, working in these dirty places and all that. But they had Jing because they were coming. Their parents gave them a good bank account, so they got through it. They lived to be 95, 100, pretty dang strong. Grandpa might have got a little rheumatism toward the end here, something like that. But really, they got through it, And then they give birth to your parents. And your parents, again, are living in the city, and your dad's working in construction and other factors. And then they're starting to eat refined foods, and all this comes up now. Fast foods are showing up. So the parents now still have good genes, so they get through life. They make it to maybe 90, 85, 90. And they're kind of like very frail by that point, right? And so they go out with some pain, and they're struggling along with no energy. They've shut the curtains, and they're in front of the television for the last 10 years of their life, right? And then they give birth to our generation now, and then we continue to live in that eating refined foods and everything. Now, if we continued on eating junk food and refined foods, we would give birth to children who would have very little Jing. But if we stopped after 3 generations and we said, wait a minute, I'm not going to eat that stuff. I'm going to go back and I'm going to eat this thing. And I'm going to get one of these smoothies here, right? We can restore and replenish Jing and regain the energy that our great-grandparents had. And this is an important threshold that we stand at in our civilization right now, because we've got children all over the place now who are 4th-generation junk food eaters. Now, what happens when you have somebody who has a lot of Jing, right? They come out of school, kid comes out of school, hey man, let's go play, right? Here comes a kid with no Jing, 4th-generation McDonald's junk food eater, like this. Hey Billy, what do you want to do when you grow up? I don't know, right? Right? And then, hey, look at Orion there. See the stars? The Orion Nebula. Yeah, right. That's their adventure, their excitement, their creativity has been robbed. They don't have any Jing. They don't have any vitality. They can get it back though. That's the thing about it. The Chinese figured out how to actually restore Jing. They found herbs that go into the kidneys and fill up the wellspring again. I'm going to show you a few of those. We start right here. Ho Shou Wu. We'll pass it around. Ho Shou Wu is the #1 restorative herb of Jing. It's a youth and longevity herb of the highest order. It can be taken by anybody, young, old, it doesn't make any difference. And you can actually start to see pigment showing up in the hair, if there's gray, and a real zest for life starting to come back. That's your Jing. You're getting your life back. You're getting your adventure, your creativity, and your sexual energies all together. This is a product I make called Morning Jing. It has all of these elements in it. And it has so the Chinese believe that foods that are black in color go to the kidneys. So you always want to eat black beans, black sesame, black rice, and black foods. And when you look at your cornucopia of your diet, and we talk about the color groups, like getting all the colors in, like David Wolf says, get your reds in there, your oranges, your yellows, your greens, and your blues, the algae, right? They forget about black. But get black in there, because black goes down and feeds the kidneys. And the ancient Chinese said, well, the kidneys are kind of black color, and they're down there where it's dark, so maybe if we eat dark colored food, it'll go down there. And they were right, because black foods have zinc and molybdenum and all these other important elements and minerals that make them have that black color. And that's really important for the kidneys. This is all black foods: black bean, black rice, black sesame, Ho Shou Wu. Take this as a morning drink. I do every day. And so then another one here is Rehmannia, my namesake herb. Rehmannia is called the kidney's own food. A fantastic youth restorative. And now, again, I reiterate, if you have a young kid who just doesn't seem to have that zest for life, they're not growing right, they're not robust and excited about everything, we can actually give them Jing tonics. Like, they will love this with a little nut milk and honey, and we can see them.
Is it processed?
Yes, this is the processed Rehmannia. This lady here knows her stuff with herbs. Well, there's two types of Rehmannia. This is the prepared Rehmannia. When it's prepared, it's been simmered in some kind of wine. It's an ancient Chinese process. They don't want to tell you exactly how it entails. And when you do that, it tonifies the kidneys. Then it becomes a tonic herb. Now, when we say tonic herb, what we mean is it is like a superfood substance that helps bring the body and maintain homeostasis between those two forces of yin and yang. Our whole idea is to bring things into balance between those two forces and hold them there. And we call that the Tao, Taoism. Taoism is the center point of equilibrium in life. When you're in the Tao, the bliss in the abyss, you are in your path on your Tao, and you are unaffected by the bliss in the abyss. Sure, hey, enjoy the bliss, learn from the abyss, but don't get like pulled in and pulled back and forth. We call that windy, a windy person, So those herbs go, and here's another one. This is Schisandra. This is a famous beauty herb. Schisandra, it's a little wild berry that is said to tonify all 5 organ systems, but it's mainly a Jing herb. You can make a fantastic drink by just putting Schisandra in a glass of water and let it soak all night. Don't have to cook it or anything. You put a little honey in there in the morning. It's just unbelievably good. If I were more of a businessman, I would come up with a Schisandra spritzer type thing at the grocery stores, but I haven't figured that out yet. But they say if you take Schisandra for 90 days, you get a perpetual smile on your face because it brings everything in homeostasis. It balances the forces of yin and yang, and it is. It's a beauty herb too. It's known to promote beauty. Let's face it. When a person is smiling, they are beautiful, right? And that begets beauty. Smiling begets beauty.
It's also an aphrodisiac.
Wow. Well, all of these are. All of these promote fertility. You see, because Jing incorporates the sexual energies. So when we're talking about tonifying the kidneys, we need to also understand how the sexual energies need to be nourished. They need to be nourished. If they're neglected or if they're abused, that is not good. We burn out Jing either way. If we suppress our sexuality, our body will start to age because they'll say, well, hey, the body's a reproductive vessel. And if we suppress our reproductive energies, the body will age. Or if we overuse them, the body will age. But knowing how to use them correctly, in a little while, if you want, I'll even speak this about healthy sexual activity. But so these herbs are called yin Jing herbs. Yin is, as I said, the taking in and holding energy into the organism for future use. So these herbs are for fertility, for the future life of our species of people. Now there are yang Jing herbs too. Yang Jing herbs help promote the immediate energy, the adrenal restoration, the sexual forces, the act of procreation, the act of creation. Drawing up from that wellspring to create a child or a great painting or a new book, or to go an endurance test. And so there are herbs that are famous for that. This one, this herb is very famous. I don't have any animal-based yang Jing herbs, which there are many. There's deer antler, and there's male silk moth, and there's ant, and there's a bunch of stuff like that. I'm a vegetarian herbalist, so I don't have those. But this herb is called Schisandra, and again, it's a black herb. See, and the Schisandra is very famous with athletes in China, and with is a top, like for people who are sexually active, couples who are trying to have children. It's good for the men and the women. Anyone who has active sex life, very good. But see, when we start to know, and this man here knows too, we never give all yang or all yin. We never say, if a guy comes in and says, I want you to increase my sexual potency, we wouldn't just give him all yang Jing herbs, because then he would burn his adrenals out. So we would give him a balance of yang and yin herbs to help him with the force, but also reconstruct for later. And so Ho Shou Wu and Rehmannia and Schisandra would be put into this guy's formula altogether, so he's not just running on that immediate energy, he's got backup. But this is in China during the Olympics, man, I mean, I didn't actually, because I don't ever see TV, but I heard the Chinese like walk circles around us. I mean, we won some things, we won here and there, but it's like the Americans were like lumbering, while the Chinese were like that, right? And it was said that the Chinese athletes were all taking some staunch, and so then the anti-doping league tried to ban it for a while, and there was a big backlash, and they backed off of that. Good thing. Here's another one. This is called Epimedium. Now, you all might have heard of this herb before because its folk name is horny goat weed. You ever heard of that? You ever see those like natural Viagra supplements at the gas station? Some of them are pretty good. Some of them actually have like, whoever made them is actually trying to help us. They'll have tribulus in there. This herb is a Yongjing herb. They'll have the Epimedium and licorice root, you know, and astragalus, and some of them are pretty good. But this herb is called horny goat weed. Now, the legend is way back 5,000 years ago, or more, maybe 10,000 years ago. This is one of the very first herbs ever listed in Chinese, ever documented in Chinese herbology in the world, in human history. The legend is that there was goat herders living around Changbai Mountain, and they would, every year, their goats would go start foraging on a certain tree, and then they'd go into a mating frenzy. And so then the farmer, the herder said, "There's a horny goat tree there." And so they got to have that name, horny goat weed. So it sounds like a kind of a derogatory name. It's actually based on an observation that goats went into their mating frenzy after chewing on them. Yeah, tribulus, another herb, beautiful herb, originally from Bulgaria now. Chinese adopted it into their pharmacopoeia in like the 1970s. Fabulous for bone, tendon, ligament support. Here's another herb. It's a Yongjing herb. It's very interesting. This is the bark of a tree, and as you pass it around, I pull on it a little bit and notice a little like tendon-like material in there. This herb is called Eucomium. It's the bark of a tree. This is probably the first herb ever documented in all human history. And this herb, it's said that what happened was people noticed that when they saw a deer or an animal get a bone fracture, the animal would go to a tree and start chewing on the bark of the tree. And then they followed that animal around and saw that its bone healed faster. And somebody wrote that down on a piece of bamboo somewhere. It's still in the Peking Library. And so then somebody got a bone fracture, and they went and got some and said, "Let's try what that deer did." And we got some of it, give it to the guy or gal, and they took it, and the bone healed up faster. Somebody wrote that down on a piece of bamboo. And so that's how it all started out. So this herb could be listed as the very first, known as the very first herb ever listed in all human history. Today, after modern research, it is considered the #1 bone tendon and ligament herb in Chinese medicine. So great for osteoporosis. Basically, especially with women, I from about mid-30s on, I think it's good to have this herb in there to support bones and ligaments.
What is it?
It's called Eucomium. Eucomium bark. It's the bark of the eucomium tree, because the seed is also used, but that's the bark. So that's Jing. So when we fortify Jing, we get our adventure back. So we're ready to take on life. We raise the shades, turn off the TV, open up the blinds, and start our garden, right? And smell the roses, and start living. Whenever you see somebody, who's got their windows all shut down and they never come out, and they do, they're pale and sickly looking, they've lost their Jing. They're just aging, but they can get it back. It's true. And so that's the first treasure. Now, the second treasure is Qi. Qi is the sunlight that is metabolizing and is the force of evolution. So Qi isn't a thing. Jing is accumulation of life, but Qi is what keeps it evolving, keeps it moving, breaking down and cleaving away of old cells. Qi is enzymes. The living force in this thing, the Carillion light put off, and the enzymes in here are Qi. Without Qi, life would just be massive piles of blubber, I guess. You could call that Jing. You could say a big pile of goo has got Jing in it, but if it isn't, evolving into something, that's Qi, and that the sun fuels that. So again, how is that sunlight winding up in our blood? So that happens in the metabolic process. The organ system that is the governor of our metabolism is the spleen meridian. Now, when the Chinese say the spleen, they don't mean the spleen itself. They mean an organ system that includes the stomach, the pancreas, the spleen, the duodenum, and the small intestine. So the stomach is a pot of tea. The pancreas and the spleen are the stovetop burner, and the duodenum and small intestine are the oven of the body. Now, this place needs to be warm and it needs to be dry. That sunlight needs to fuel that flame, and that's said to come from the solar plexus here, and then fuel this flame so that when we eat food, it is hydrolyzed down and cooked into a sort of a soup in our stomach, so that when it goes into the duodenum and small intestine, in liquid form, our body can extract the nutrients out of it, and get the iron out of it, and get the iron ions inserted into the red blood cells. So the blood is first fortified. The first stage of Qi is in the lungs. So when we take a deep breath of air, our diaphragm presses down on the liver, and old devitalized blue blood from the vascular system comes up and into the lung alveoles. And then we get oxygen molecules on the red blood cell. And then it is pumped again through the aortal valve, and where then it goes down, and most of it then travels through the splenic artery, where it goes through the spleen meridian. Now, during that process, it picks up iron ions. So if the blood has oxygen molecules and iron ions, it turns bright red. And once the blood is bright red, it can hold hemoglobin, which is Qi. And then it carries that hemoglobin through the body for, sorry buddy, excuse us. And so it carries the blood through the arterial system to distribute hemoglobin and nutrients to the extremities and to all the other organ systems and everything, the cells of the body. Now, that means that this flame has to be hot in order for that to happen. Now, how many of you have been to a Chinese doctor and they've said, oh, your spleen is dead? No? Okay, yeah. Yeah. See, this is common, and it's more common with women. You see two women raise their hands. Men have a slightly different equation. We get damp spleen too. But women are prone to this. Why? Because women have, in general, most women have what we call a yin constitution. Yin is water, it is fluid. Yin is the intaking of energy and the holding. So women are silent ones who take and hold everything, right? And the female body is designed to hold masses here and to expand a little bit right here. And so if the female body then can wind up accumulating moisture right here as edema, what happens is that the hips go out this way, and the bloating with edema starts to occur here. And this is relatively common with women if their metabolism is damp. Now, dampening foods include the raw food diet, and that's one reason why I wrote this, because the raw food diet can be dampening for the spleen. But there is an equation. I'm going to show you. In the long run, the raw food diet is most important because it has Qi in it, because the food is living. It hasn't been stripped of all of its Qi, right? With all the processing and cooking, boiling, frying, and redrying, and powdering, and all this stuff, right? So that's why the food has Qi in it, but yet it is dampening. So there's an equation that I explained here. Anyway, other dampening foods are dairy and sugar and bread and many of the things that we eat, cheese, all that kind of stuff. It causes potential dampening conditions here. And with women, you will see potentially the side going out. With men, it goes up, we go this way. And we get a phlegminess, phlegmy Qi that goes out the belly like that. And there's oftentimes parasites in there. So men could cleanse their blood more often. Women lose blood more often during the menstrual cycles. So with women, it isn't so much an issue of fat or something like that. This is water retention. So that's why when women are feeling this pesky widening of their hips, they're going and they're starving themselves and going and doing yoga, and it's like, well, this won't go away. Why? Because it's not fat, it's actually moisture. And so what we need to do is we need to go in, and the Chinese were right. They said, you got to warm the spleen, you got to dry the spleen meridian and warm and turn that flame up, crank that knob up on the stove there a couple notches, and then get that flame up, and so that that pot of tea is well cooked down, and we can extract that into the blood. The Chinese figured out how to warm the spleen and tonify. We call tonify, warm this cauldron to increase metabolism, not only of food, but also of fluids. So increase metabolism of water and fluids that's accumulated, right? this is the #1 herb for that. White atractyloses. White atractyloses. You can smell it. It's got an interesting smell. This herb is said to warm, we call the middle jiao. So the lower jiao is the Jing area, which is all the reproductive and kidneys and everything. Now, the middle jiao is the metabolic. So we're warming now. We're warming this cauldron here in the middle jiao with this herb. This herb is always combined with this herb. Usually, always combined. If I don't see these two herbs together, sometimes I question the formula. This is called poria, and poria is said to transform damp into qi. So poria is very popular in China with young women. In China, they put jam inside the sugar and they eat it. They eat it like that. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was in China in 1985, I went there by coincidence. I didn't know I was going to be a Chinese herbalist at that time. When I was married to a Chinese woman, we went there. We went to the north of China, near Chongqing Mountain, by total coincidence. And they took us to herb farms almost every stop. I was really blessed by that because I saw the reverence they held for the soil and everything. But then one night we were eating this opulent meal in an emperor's palace in Xi'an, which is the seat of Chinese civilization, this old city. And we were in the emperor's palace and we were eating this opulent meal. And then up on the very top tier, there's a little plate that had 3 little white Hershey's Kiss looking things. And nobody ate any of them, so eventually I said, well, I'm going to try one. And I reached up to get it. And our tour guide snickered a little bit in a gentle way. And I bit into it. It tasted like if you took flour and wetted it and made a little hard stone out of it and then let it dry, you know. And I went, and he goes, he starts laughing. And I said, what is that? He says, that's the only thing one empress ate. I said, why? He goes, because she was famous for having a nice figure. Now that was poria. Now I always follow up that story, like don't just go eat only poria. I'm sure that lady wasn't entirely healthy. But anyway, it's famous because of that. This empress took it every day. Yeah, see poria there. And so poria transforms dampened qi, so it's combined with white atractyloses to warm the middle jiao and facilitate the removal of what is dampening. When the spleen area gets damp here, it is a wonderful place for yeasts and other microbes to build up. So candida can start to proliferate in here. And we call this qi stagnation. So anytime anything accumulates that is not moving, and it is an accumulation of something that's unwanted, it is qi stagnation. So every single disease, every osis and every itis is qi stagnation. When qi is not flowing, if it's blocked, what do you get? Diverticulitis, you know, right? Colitis, it's stuck stuff, right? And so when qi is flowing freely, it's much harder for disease to sit in. And so this herb is included in the formulas, in qi formulas. This herb is called white peony. It's the root of the white peony flower. White peony root is said to break up qi stagnation and to get qi flowing freely. Menstrual cramping and problems. This is very famous in that. Constipation, arthritis. A famous formula, just this and licorice root alone for arthritis. Really effective. Yeah. So now I wanted to say that every single herb I have shown you can be put into the same formula. In fact, I do pretty much. I put every herb, with exception to some of the sexually driving sort of herbs. If that's not what you want, I don't put that in there. But I oftentimes put every herb I've shown you in a formula for people because they're just plain good. It's good to fill up that wellspring. It's good to get that sunlight, you know, into the blood. Then we're going to move up to the heart chakra. Oh, no, here. Now, the sunlight gets in the blood. Why is the metabolism important in the blood? Because we have to get iron ions out of the food and get the iron ion in the blood cells, what makes it red. Then it can hold qi and hold hemoglobin. So then we have to build blood. Now here's another equation that I talked about in here. And the editor actually changed my quote, and I'm not really happy with the way it's stated right now. Let's get that fixed. But why did they call it the spleen? Why did they call it the stomach? You think these ancient people, why didn't they look at the stomach and say, well, that's where the stomach is. The stomach, that's where food's digested, right? Why did they call it the spleen? Because they already knew that the spleen is a reservoir of red and white blood cells. So the red and white blood cells intermingle in the spleen. There's a part gland, part organ. And what happens is the white blood cells are our immune defense, and they phagocytize or destroy anything that is no longer vital. So what happens is the white blood cells destroy the old red blood cells while they're in the spleen, so that the only blood that leaves the spleen can carry qi. So that's why the beginning of qi in the blood is the spleen. The spleen is a filter to make sure the old stuff is removed, and that only vital blood leaves there to pick up new iron ions for qi. So with women, in particular, because women have menstrual cycles, so women lose blood, it's pretty amazing how quickly women can lose blood. I'm always amazed at how fast, I mean, how much blood a young woman can lose. Now, no other female animals lose this much blood. It's an anomaly. If you want to look a little further in some Western insights into this, one of my very favorite books is called Sex, Time, and Power by a guy named Leonard Shen. And it is all about, the whole premise of the book is why do modern women bleed so much? And they tried to go back to the paleontological stuff and figure it out. It has a lot to do with the excessive eating of meat, cooked meat that happened, once we discovered fire, and other factors. But now, some of us are choosing not to eat so much meat. And some of us are becoming potentially anemic because if qi is low and not enough iron gets into the blood doesn't have enough qi, and the blood then isn't going upright, so the blood starts to trickle down. And then you have excess menstrual loss. Sometimes the blood is dark then with qi stagnation, and that causes pain, cramping, and mental disequilibrium is from the liver. And that's the PMS symptoms come from the liver, because the liver is trying to deal with the stagnant blood. And the liver is the seat of the emotions. But so what we want to do is we want to fortify the blood to have a lot of qi, but we also want to help women build blood. And that's this herb here. Now, if you know vegetarian women, and I have been a vegetarian for 30 years, us guys, we don't have so much to worry about losing blood, but we need to cleanse it more often. Our blood can get kind of rusty, so the good thing about the women menstruals thing is that the blood is kind of kept fresh through it and cleansed. And so this herb is called dong guai. Dong guai is really important for modern people so that we don't have to keep eating so much meat, because yes, a woman in particular might crave a piece of meat every once in a while just to get some iron in the blood. It isn't the protein we're looking for, it's the iron is what your body's wanting. But if we choose to have something like dong guai, now the studies aren't conclusive, like the studies haven't really, maybe somebody's blocking the studies from being seen, maybe somebody in the meat industry, but I have not. When I wrote my mother book called Healing Thresholds, which I don't have any of, I could not find conclusive studies on how this builds blood, but it just does. It's been used for hundreds of years by younger menstruating women. What they do in China is that after the period is done, beginning of a new cycle, during the ovular phase, they take in a handful of spinach and maybe that much dong guai and steam it together and eat that for a week or so to build new blood, fresh blood for the next lunar cycle. Great thing. I've gotten where I put dong guai in everyone's formulas just because I feel like we Americans need to fortify our blood. And I find a lot of nearly anemic men here too. The signs of anemia are cold hands and feet, a lethargy, sluggish metabolism, which can contribute to the weight gain and water, acne, yes, and lethargy. And the cold hands and feet is a real big giveaway that a young woman is near anemia. Now, after women go through the change into menopause and beyond, if they were anemic before, they can continue to be anemic afterward. You can still build blood. This herb, longan, is a blood-building herb, so we would put that in this formula now to help fortify the blood with iron. The Chinese say this herb is somewhat like meat. You know what? Let's all have it. Let's all eat one. Here, just have one. Yeah, okay. Notice how it tastes kind of like meat. You see, the Chinese were never a heavy meat-eating race. They didn't eat a lot. They ate a little pork, but not, they didn't eat cows. What's that cow? That's good. And so they believe that this fortifies the blood, but it's also very good for the heart. So it also is, now we're starting to bring this formula up now to the next chakra.
What is that called again?
Longan. A lot of these herbs taste really good. Like if you were to eat Schisandra and Rehmannia, they taste very good. They're kind of sweet. So now we've built a formula that fortifies Jing and supplements Qi. Now, when we do that, our metabolism is strengthened and our future is secure genetically, energetically. Then what happens? Our adrenals start to replenish, right? Because we feel safe and empowered. When your kidneys are strong and you have good energy, you feel, I can go do that. And what does that do to your aura, right? What does that do to your energy field? It's going to be brighter. You have an air of optimism. All energy is attracted to that. And that energy we call Shen. That's the third treasure. When we radiate, when Jing is strong, our foundation is solid, our energy is great, we radiate Shen. That's the third treasure. And Shen is the spirit, simply translated as spirit. And this is the #1 Shen herb in the world. This is called Reishi mushroom, and this is the real reason why I'm out doing these lectures. Sure, I like to tell people how to be healthy, how to regain their youth and sexuality and all that stuff. But if that were the end of the line for me, if that's all I talked about, I'd just be talking materialism, We have to say, where are we going with our evolution? What are we doing, And right now, the human race must shift into a spiritual-oriented race. We have to. We have no more choice. And so this herb is showing itself to us. It's coming into our view now. The Chinese have used it for 5,000 years, Lingji. They call this the herb of spiritual immortality. And they also call it a bridge between earth and heaven. And it's depicted in scroll paintings as they have earth down here and people milling about buildings and going about their daily jobs and business. And then there's this rock escarpment and there's a Reishi, and up here there's heaven and there's immortals flying around on dragons. So the Chinese believed that when you tonify and bring all three treasures into homeostasis, you become a metamorphic being into another dimension. And the dragon is the vehicle that we fly on to go to other levels. Now I wrote a book called Elixirs of Immortality about the whole history of how the Chinese believed that the ancient immortals would attain immortality and fly around the heavens on dragons. And this is a really fun book. You can sit around. It's my latest book, actually. My teacher, Ron Teeguarden, really likes this a lot. It's fun reading. But it has a lot of history in it. It talks about the beginnings of it all. Shen Nong, the Yellow Emperor, Gehung, the first alchemist, and the Fangji, who were the first Chinese doctors. But they all focused on Reishi mushrooms. And the elixir of immortality that Gehung came up with was called cinnabar gold. And then his actual recipe disappeared. Probably the emperors wanted to keep it to themselves. But so then the subsequent alchemists started trying to work with cinnabar and gold and mercury and stuff, and they were like killing themselves, killing people with this stuff. And thought that Gehung was wrong, and that he was messing with all these all these minerals and there were metals that were toxic. Well, then I started looking at him, trying to pierce into the hidden, cryptic language behind everything. And the beautiful thing about the Chinese history is they put lots of cryptic language in there. If you can translate it, you can figure out a lot of stuff. I found out that there is a type of reishi called cinnabar gold reishi. So I'm sure this was the main herb in his elixir of immortality, which he wrote about in 300 BC. And so now this herb is a mushroom, and it is thought to be an extraterrestrial life form. Mycologists don't think it has earthly origins. It comes from everywhere. It exists all over the whole universe. And I believe it to be a seed of consciousness, or carry seeds of a higher consciousness. And so this one's red, and it's called Ganoderma lucidum, which I think is really cool. That just means shiny mushroom. It's kind of cool because we can also kind of imply lucidity, because that's what it does. When you take this, you become more lucid. And your lucidity, your clarity of that light and the connectedness of it to everything, you start to see how everything is interrelated. Because this mushroom has, the actual mushroom, this is the sexual apparatus of the mushroom. The actual mushroom is this white fuzzy stuff that grows under the ground, all around, and it connects life's substrate materials to each other. It carries minerals to this tree, and works with that tree to bring homeostasis to the forest. And so it is a neurological network, is what this is. Now, I was talking with David Wolf one time back in 2009. I said this in a film that's on YouTube, and I said, you know, I think that this is the origin of neurological systems, because the algae and the bacteria were symbionts to create physical matter. That this came in with that mycelination was an information transport system. And I said, you know, if you look at our eyes, actually, if you look at our cells, there's a thing called the cytoplasm, which looks like it's the neurological network at the inside of the cell that takes the information from the hormones into the mitochondria. And this looks like mycelia fungi. So I think that this is responsible for consciousness. And that's why when we take it, it may have some kind of more profound consciousness than we do. Because, for instance, I saw a diagram of known life. It was a circle, and it's open at the top because there's a few missing links. I don't know. But a lot of it is extraterrestrial, little archaea and, you know, protids and these things. And single-cellular organisms come up down here, and spirulina, chlorella, the early life forms, and then suddenly you have ciliates and little, you know, things with like 10 cells and little things with flagella on them. And it works its way up to and this is funny because this graph says animals and humans. So we're like different from animals, but I don't know how exactly. But it says animals and humans, and right under that is trees and forests and everything. And then directly below that is slime molds. So we're like pretty close to slime molds still, and genetically, I mean, evolutionary speaking. But then beyond humans, it says fungi. It is the last fungals. So there could be aspects of this that are more advanced than we are. And we know when we take them, this is not psychotropic, but it does plug you back into the sacredness of life. I kid you not. You can take this. Now, for instance, I have it here in this product of mine, which is remarkable. I created this 7 years ago, and I'm still kind of appreciative that it happened, that I downloaded this information. But this is a 10-to-1 extract of reishi mushroom here, and along with the Ayurvedic superfood shilajit and some ormus, which I'll tell you about at that time. But you can take this and make a coffee-like drink. It tastes like coffee. You guys could serve it here. It'd be great. And it tastes just like a latte, and it's a really satisfying coffee drink. You can go here. And if you got people around you who are not on the spiritual path you're on, and you want them, like as my brother, mother, father, sister. Hey Joe, I made you this little coffee-like drink. And then in about a week or so, you start seeing like, well, how are you? You know, you start seeing like opening up a little more. You know, let's go walking in the park. You know? God, it's a beautiful tree. You know, wow, Joe. And so, yeah, this you could actually start to see this. It's universal. All people. I want to go to like Texas and get a bunch of ranchers in his hand and film it. Watch them just soften up, man. Watch the guy come out of his son's bedroom after a week with a tie-dyed T-shirt on. This thing I found. What do you think? You know? And so, no, it's universal. Anyone who takes reishi has if you have psycho-spiritual baggage, obstructions to your higher calling, these things can be like taken off in a little gray shirt. It was that way for me. Anything that's obstructing your channeling of your higher calling, this will get clear. And so the Chinese say it initiates benevolent cycles of health in your life. When you take it, benevolence starts to show around you. You find yourself able to help others more. You find yourself receiving more benevolence. Your Shen is getting brighter. Your light is brighter. When the light is brighter, it means your frequency's going up. When the frequency goes up, you're further away from calamity. The further we go up, the further we are from calamity. Two people are walking along. One has Shen, the other is an alcoholic with a toxic liver. Which one of them is the car mover of the speeding car going by more likely to come in contact with, right? Because the frequency is closer to that metal right down there. When we are impervious, we have health beyond danger, and we have the three treasures. So, that is essentially my talk, and I can tell you, I can take questions and tell you about some of this stuff. But reishi, shilajit is the humic acids of ancient rainforests. You can pass it around. It is the #1 Ayurvedic herb. They say people who take shilajit like run right through brick walls and stuff. They call it conqueror of mountains, destroyer of weakness. And it is thought to have all of the 125 or so elements in it, all the minerals that are in Shilaji. It's essentially an ancient rainforest that was broken down before the Himalayas went up. You know, and that's what's in there. I mean, that's talking about special. And I actually wrote a book on Shilaji too. This is the first book written in Western language on Shilaji. But Shilaji alone is a fascinating substance. I have some of the actual resin I take once in a while. Then the third element in here is Ormus. And Ormus is a energetic element that's literally, Ormus means orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. And so it has to do with the energetic principles that cause dedication of life, at what we see and what we manifest as this life in front of us. How is it all dedicated, right? Well, for instance, if you look at water and you look at crystal, they have the same molecular structure. They have a hexagonal structure, water and crystal. Yet water is called an open equilibrium system, so water can absorb, take in, things go to entropy in water. Whereas with crystal, it is a fixed equilibrium system. You cannot shift it into anything else. Well, what dedicates between the two? So that's the Ormic principle. It's thought to be highly concentrated in gold. That's why gold is so valuable. That's why some people think that aliens are there. Some people like David, was it David Icke or somebody, is that his name? He says we were actually like a slave race to mine gold for aliens. That we were planted here to get gold. And so that this one, Four Eternals, again, a wonderful tasting hot drink in the morning time. This is for people who think a lot and sit. So architects, students, secretaries, someone on the phone, someone, graphic designer, Ho Shou Wu, the old black-haired Mr. Ho, to replenish your drink of kidneys. Astragalus, top immuner. This is astragalus here, one of the top immuners in the world. And it also supports what's called upright Qi. And then rhodiola from Tibet. Rhodiola is the #1 Tibetan herb for bringing oxygen to the brain. This is the herb the term adaptogen was coined over. So now everybody's searching for adaptogens, adaptogenic herbs, right? Do you know some good adaptogenic Western herbs?
Well, Reishi.
Well, yeah, Reishi is a worldwide phenomenon. It grows anywhere.
I mean, holy basil, which is an Ayurvedic one, but it's a great
that's right.
tester. They're mostly Chinese. Chaga is actually not a true adaptogen.
Which one?
Chaga, not a true adaptogen.
Maybe not, yeah. I think is it sarsaparilla, might be? Or is it, no.
My teacher wrote the book on adaptogens.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool, I can see that. Well, rhodiola is the top adaptogen. This is the herb, the term was quoted over when Nikolai Lazarov discovered it in Russia in 1946. But this herb brings oxygen to the brain. The Tibetan people use it because they live up so high, so they use it to get oxygen to the brain. And then there is some shilajit there, because I use shilajit and formulas as an amplifier. There's that. But this thing right here, if you've got somebody in school, somebody who needs a lot of mental focus through the day, and also it is a Jing tonic to replenish the kidneys. I have some chaga and some shilajit straight up here. And then this really is my product for the mainstream to replenish Jing is morning Jing, but I have a super morning Jing that has all these things in it, but it includes reishi, shilajit, moringa, and chlorella, which are two green superfoods, algainous green superfoods. So this is a really super duper thing as a daily, supplement to get your day going. All people, I take this every day. I won't go anywhere without it. I actually take this one. This one to me is like too potent for some reason, but that's because I'm already too amped.